And here I thought that Lindsay Lohan's first comeback was exciting when she started making Netflix rom-coms. Well, guess what?
This is so much better than that.
She thinks you're cute.
I do not.
Yes, she does.
I do.
She so does.
Dr. Coleman? Oh my God, go! That's my therapist!
Hi, I'm LadyJenevia, and on my channel I talk about entertainment media. Today I'm going to be reviewing Freakier Friday, which is the sequel to the 2003 film Freaky Friday. This sequel brings back many of the cast from that film, and the premise reads, years after Tess and Anna endured an identity crisis, Anna now has a daughter of her own and a soon-to-be stepdaughter. As they navigate the myriad challenges that come when two families merge, Tess and Anna discover lightning might indeed strike twice. The original Freaky Friday film from 2003 had Anna and her mother Tess swap bodies, but this time around it's a quadruple swap spanning 3 generations in total. I had a lot of fun with this sequel, but I will also make it very clear that there's definitely a specific audience that is most likely to enjoy it. If you're a fan of the 2003 film, you are the target audience and you're the ones that are most likely to appreciate the multitude of details of artistic, narrative, and referential choices that were made in creating this sequel. My pull quote reads, Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis pick up right where they left off by seamlessly diving back into outlandish comedic hijinks and enough emotional depth to strongly resonate with the no longer adolescents who grew up watching the first film. If you're a fan of the 2003 film, I do recommend watching the sequel. So now I'm going to spoil some things so you can decide for yourself if you would like to proceed further with this review. Most of my feedback is positive, so I will just get the one noteworthy criticism out of the way first. Manny Jacinto did not at any point do a convincing British accent, and I fail to understand why his accent had to be British in the first place. You meet his character's mother. She flew in from Manila. Why couldn't he either 1, just use the accent he has in real life, or 2, maybe have him do a light Tagalog accent, because I would assume that that would have been easier for him to do and be believable than whatever it was he was attempting to do for this role. It sounds like when people from outside of that region attempt to do a so-called British accent, but they're not actually committing to a specific one. You need to pick a location for starters. Are they from Manchester? Is the accent Geordie? Scouse? Are they from East London? I'm still waiting for a big romantic project which will have a leading man with an accent like Danny Dyer. I feel like that would make the film more fun to watch.
So what's happened to that twat David Cameron who called it on? Let's be fair.
And again, I have to ask, why did he need to be British in the first place? Why couldn't he just be Pinoy from Manila, like his mother? By the way, I didn't get nearly enough of her. I really liked her energy. She was very fun. I should only be excited that there's finally a film with enough sense to let Manny Jacinto be the romantic lead, because everything else he was doing, except for the accent, was fabulous and highly watchable. When they were doing the dance number where they were referencing Dirty Dancing, I was living. Manny Jacinto channeling some Patrick Swayze energy? Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. That was one of many things that made this worth the price of admission. Conversely, though, the large ensemble often teeters between feeling overcrowded and completely necessary to being referential for the benefit of the core fan base. Depending on the scene and depending on which point in the film you're at, sometimes I was left feeling like it was one or the other. Too much or exactly the right amount. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't have bothered to include this younger generation in the story. After all, it makes all the sense in the world to try to bring on the next generation and bring them on board for appreciating the story and look back into the story's roots. Lindsay Lohan projects in this latest comeback of hers definitely come across as being made with a clear understanding of who the target audience is. It's people who grew up with her films. When Lindsay Lohan first started her acting comeback, she was beginning with these Netflix rom-coms, and I vividly remember how exciting this was when it first started. When the trailer for Falling for Christmas was first released, I remember that the comment section was full of people who were expressing warm wishes and welcome back messages to Lindsay Lohan, being happy that she was going to be doing movies again, sharing appreciation for how much joy and entertainment she brought to an entire generation of moviegoers. When you look back at those Netflix rom-coms now, that they're a couple of years old, it's easy to nitpick things about them. They're direct-to-streaming releases, and the production budgets, or lack thereof, are clearly visible in a lot of the overall visual presentation. But I was adamant that I wanted those movies to be successful in order to serve as a stepping stone for Lindsay Lohan to be back on the big screen. And here we finally reached that with Freakier Friday. Just as an example of Freakier Friday towing that line between being overcrowded or doing exactly what you need to do to satisfy the fans of the original, they introduce a new song in this sequel, and the way that it's used in the narrative does serve an important emotional purpose in this relationship between Anna and her daughter. However, when they finally get to the part where Pink Slip are reuniting and they're going to perform, we're all excited to hear them sing our favorite songs that we've been singing along to for years. And then they go and perform this new song, and it's a ballad. You think we've waited 22 years for a Pink Slip reunion to hear a ballad that we've never heard before and have no attachment to? Absolutely not. Now, intellectually, I understand what you're doing, but that doesn't change the fact that I did not feel an emotional surge until your flop ballad finished and Pink Slip started performing Take Me Away. Give us the greatest hits. More or less all of the most entertaining parts of this film were the most over-the-top comedic hijinks, the attempted flirting at the record store, the many cross-generational jokes, kind of like when they called John Mayer and Coldplay music for old people. That was hilarious. I was cackling. There's also an admirable precision to the cross-generational references, even in the film's soundtrack. They open the film with a bit of Chapel Roan, but then once the body swaps happen, we get songs from early Britney Spears, the Spice Girls. They understand that this is a film where nostalgia is a pillar of every facet of the artistic creative process. I really like when art is referential without being derivative, like when they had Tess and Anna, even though it was the younger generation occupying their bodies, flying through the air in a red car, very clearly a Ferris Bueller's Day Off reference. I'm not a John Hughes fan at all, but I had fun with the reference because it clearly demonstrated this cross-generational approach to fun. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Dirty Dancing, those films are clearly from an entirely different era than the 2003 film, but this time around, the generational gaps span this larger range, so it makes sense to include them. I was optimistic going into this film, not only because it was bringing back Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis. There have been plenty of nostalgia bait sequels made in recent years that bring back original cast members, but that alone isn't enough to indicate that the film will be high quality. But I knew that this sequel, Freakier Friday, was going to be directed by Nisha Ganatra. For those of you who don't know who that is, she directed a 2019 film called Late Night, which I remember as being one of my favorite films from that year. That film had humor, heart, and just overall substance in its storytelling and performances. And you can feel that similar pulse in the more emotionally heartfelt exchanges in Freakier Friday when the comedic hijinks are put on pause and you're instead lingering on this genuine connection within this soon-to-be blended family. And I think that even in the most enjoyable over-the-top comedies that I've enjoyed in recent years, it's good to have that emotional substance to also be able to ground the film. Joyride, No Hard Feelings, The Lost City, just to name a few examples of that. And actually, speaking of Joyride, I was thinking about that film in my subconscious, and what do you know? I'm watching Freakier Friday, and Sherry Cola popped up in a small scene. What a fun surprise that was!
What?
Another referential detail I loved is that Elaine Hendricks pops up for a small role, and if you don't know who Elaine Hendricks is, she played Meredith Blake in the 1998 version of The Parent Trap, and that's not only referential because of it being yet another Lindsay Lohan film that her core audience adores. That version of The Parent Trap also had a similar referential appearance by having Joanna Barnes play Meredith Blake's mother. When she said in her appearance, "Hello, pet. You may call me Aunt Vicky." Oh, I could have yelled every time I would rewatch that growing up because she played the wicked stepmother character in the 1961 version of The Parent Trap. Her character's name in that film was Vicky, and she would use the word pet as a sort of patronizing nickname. Overall, I would say that Freakier Friday understands its target audience very well, and also why that audience loved its predecessor as much as we did. You've got a lot of fun, heartfelt relationships between women. More or less everyone is returning in this sequel, even if it's only just for a small bit. Speaking of that, Chad Michael Murray was so unexpectedly silly in this film. I don't think I anticipated that because he's more known for being this conventionally attractive leading man heartthrob and not necessarily for the dazzling personality of those characters. It's like they took that memorable scene of him singing Britney Spears to Jamie Lee Curtis in the first film and decided to just run with that energy and dial it up to an 11. I don't really recall seeing him play a properly silly character before. But if you want a fun movie that's for the girls, Lindsay Lohan back on the big screen, a love letter of a sequel with Manny Jacinto as a romantic leading man, a movie that showcases intergenerational love within a family, then watch Freakier Friday.